Hello, good morning. Happy Saturday, everybody. Let me just do a quick audio check here. Make sure I'm good to go. Give me 1 second. All right. Sounds like I am good to go. All right. Let me lower this down a bit. Got the iPad here just in case I kind of zone out in this area here. Okay, I can see what's going on. All right. Happy Saturday, everybody. Thank you for stopping by today. Today's episode, I'm very, very excited about today's episode because usually we're talking about the art side of embroidery, right? The nice, beautiful stuff that we see in embroidery. But a lot of times, right, embroidery is like a double-edged sword. It's like all it's art and there's also science behind it. So there's the technical side of embroidery. And a couple weeks ago, we kind of did like a survey during our lives where we said what's kind of like the hardest part about embroidery, and pretty much down the line, right, it's because I broke it down. The digitizing was tracing, angles, and settings, and it was pretty much everybody kind of agreed that the settings, a lot of the times the settings is the more difficult part about digitizing and embroidery. Okay, so today I kind of want to take a step back and analyze settings, okay? Because I know when I started digitizing and I first opened up a software, okay, I didn't even know where to begin because there's so many options. Like you click on something and there's like countless of options, and sometimes you feel like if you change a certain setting, you might just mess up the whole design, okay? And a lot of times if we actually know what each of those settings do, all right, it's less intimidating. It's less scary thinking that you're going to mess up your design. Okay. You can actually experiment more. Like you'll feel a little bit more comfortable experimenting with certain artwork or certain projects. Okay. Even if you get your digitizing, right? Digitized by a digitizer. Okay. Sometimes you have to go back and make some minor tweaks. Okay. Because when a digitizer is digitizing your artwork, okay, they might have an idea of what you're going to use it for. Okay. But they don't see the whole entire picture. They don't know that you might change it from a sweater to a lighter polo shirt or to a heavier jacket or to a beanie. Okay. So a lot of times, if you want to transition and go from one piece of garment to another, sometimes you got to make minor tweaks. Okay. And sometimes all it takes is little minor detail changes to make everything run smooth. All right. So I want to say good morning to everybody. Okay. Looks like we have a pretty good crowd today. All right. Um, Today's Saturday. Okay. I know for me, for us here, Saturday is my favorite day of the week because you have options, right? You can either be very productive on your business or on your personal, right? If you have any personal goals, or you could spend a day with family, friends. You can go out, you can catch up with people. Okay. So I definitely want to thank you for stopping by today because I know all of us, right? We can do 100,000 other stuff right now, but we are here. I'm excited, always not just teaching the embroidery because believe it or not, I learn a lot by explaining embroidery. Okay. Because sometimes there's some stuff that you just know, you don't know why you know it. Like somebody told you, hey, these are the settings. Okay. But sometimes it's kind of hard to explain why. Okay, so taking a step back and explaining the who, what, where, when, how, why. Okay, breaking down stitches, why a stitch acts a certain way. Why do we call a stitch a certain stitch? Okay, um, it's very good practice. All right, it's very good practice to know terminology and all the technical information. Okay, because in embroidery, I think a lot of information about embroidery is just kind of like passed down from one person to the next, to the next, to the next. But a lot of times we don't know why we're doing certain stuff. Okay, so I always like to teach the whys. I don't just want to give you a setting and say, hey, punch in these numbers and you should be good. Okay, I want to go over all the numbers. Okay, so we're gonna break down. Let me see if my computer is good to go. Yep. I got the software. Okay. We're going to go through as many settings, and you're going to see how once you kind of learn, I would say 3 settings, you pretty much know, I would say 80-90% of all the settings, because a lot of it is just repetition, like same questions. Some settings, they're just worded differently. Okay. They're just worded differently. And then we'll talk about why certain software costs more than other software. Okay, a lot of it, I would say, a lot of it has to do with just mathematics. Okay, how much information that software is crunching your numbers, and the more it can crunch numbers, the more settings, the more options that you have. Okay, so we'll talk about all those options. All right, so let's say a good morning real quick. Okay, good morning, Michael, Patty from Washington State. Okay. Michael from Germany. All right. From the other side of the pond. Barb, good morning. I know it's pretty cold where you're at because here, 21, right? I'm pretty sure with the wind chill, we're probably like at 10 or something. Okay. It's all snowy. So my whole view out here, out my balcony, it's all snowy right here. All right. Marisa for Southern California. Aldale. All right. Uh, Rachel, good morning. TMG, good morning. Good to have you. Linda, Bevy Jean, T Towns in the house, Toledo, Ohio. All right. Lelia, good morning. Roller, yep. D Cashin. All right. Good to have everybody here. I'm super excited about today's lesson. Simbawa, good morning. Um, Hold on. T Town got a question about. Oh yeah. We'll talk about print preview. That's a good question. All right. A lot of the information that we're using today, I use different options on the print preview. Uh, and then TMG, good comment right here. Control over settings is one of the main reasons I upgrade. Yep. Yep. The more control you have with your settings, the more you can do. All right. Because sometimes your design isn't coming out right, and you don't know kind of where to start, like who to blame. Do you blame the equipment? Do you blame your hooping? Do you blame, right, your software or your digitizing? Okay. Sometimes I'm telling you, it's just a minor little tweak or minor change a little node, and everything just kind of falls into place. All right. So that's why settings, all right, knowing all the settings, very important. Shamika, good morning. Prentice D. K. Benny from the Philippines. All right. Nice to have you here. Bam Bam. And then Bevy Jean. Thank you for the answers to the why. I think I was all one of those. Yep. Yep. In order for me to understand some type of information, I need to know why. So you always have those kids. I know my daughter, she's always asking why. If I tell her to do something, she wants to know why. Okay, which I don't have a problem because I'm the same type. If somebody's telling me to do something, there has to be a reason for it. All right. Uh, so same thing with embroidery. Okay. If somebody's telling you to put in these settings, you should have an idea, or they should explain why are we doing something. Okay. It's all about the whys. Why are we making this change? All right. Sidart from Tennessee. Rhonda, Houston. All right. H Town in the house. All right. Let's get started with today's training. All right. Let me see. Let's switch this up here. Let's change cameras. All right. All right. All right. So here. Oh, wait. I forgot to put out some information. All right, just real quick. Today's so here on the left on the screen, those are swatches. Okay, those are kind of gonna guide us in our settings. Okay, because let me ask a rhetorical question. Okay, let me ask everybody a rhetorical question, and that is, can you tell the difference if you were to see a satin stitch? Do you think you can tell the difference between a 2 millimeter sand stitch and a 3 millimeter sand stitch? Okay, if somebody were to bring you a sand stitch, just one sand stitch, and they asked you what size in millimeters is this sand stitch, do you think you can kind of guess the correct one? Okay, I would say that it'd be pretty hard. Okay, it'd be pretty hard. Um, Especially just seeing it, right? Especially I know when I go to department stores or lids or something, and I'm checking out hats, I kind of have an idea, right? I'm always looking at embroidery. Like that's my hobby is going to other locations and looking at embroidery. All right. I'm pretty sure there's other embroiders out there that have that same kind of weird hobbies, right? Looking at artwork, right? Some people like to go to museums and look at paintings. Okay. I like to go to department stores, right? Some of the upscale department store and look at embroidery. All right. Sometimes you look at it and you kind of have an idea what is the thickness of this sand stitch. Okay. Sometimes once they go at a certain level, you're kind of like, oh wow, it's pretty long for a sand stitch, right? You could kind of have an idea. All right. But I would say for myself, I probably wouldn't have it at 100%. I'll probably be a 50-50 guess if I were to guess between a 2 millimeter and a 3 millimeter sand stitch. Okay. But the more you see it, okay, now the difference between a 2 and a 4 millimeter, okay, I could spot that easily. All right. So there's a big difference between 2 and 4. Okay. But sometimes we might have to change a setting from 2 millimeters to 2.35 millimeters, like little tiny. Like, let's say, for example, like a push pull compensation, right? Now you're talking about little tiny small tweaks in the settings. Okay, so today I kind of want to I want to show you like an exercise that I use to kind of distinguish, especially if I'm looking at stitches and I'm kind of thinking, should I make this sand stitch bigger or not? Okay, so I use swatches to guide me. Okay, to give me an idea, to give me a reference point. Okay, because if you have a reference point right next to you and you use it and you kind of analyze it and you compare it, now it's easier to kind of distinguish a 2 and a 3. Because when you put a 2 and a 3 together, a 2 millimeter and a 3 millimeter sand stitch together, you could definitely see the difference. All right, so you could kind of see the sand stitches here, which I'm going to zoom in. Okay, and same thing with a fill stitch. Okay, can you tell the difference between a density of zero point 0.4, length of 4 millimeters, which is kind of standard? All softwares keep that as standard. Can you tell the difference between that and something probably the zero point 0.5 density with a 6 millimeter length? Okay, so those are numbers. Those are numbers that embroidery is all based off. Okay, um, I'll bring it up right now, but really everything that we learned in in school, okay, area, right? Does anybody remember how to compute the area of a space, right? So everybody remembers length times width. Okay, embroidery is kind of the same. The technical part of it is kind of the same idea. Okay, same concept. Okay, but instead of length times width, we use length times density. Okay, so that's really what the software is doing. It's computing your boxes that you create, your designs, and it's creating it into areas and fill stitch. All right, so we're gonna talk about that right now too. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's transition to the light box. Okay, if you have any questions or anything, put a Q. Let me see. Let me just move my computer. I could see it from where I'm at here. All right. And then T-Town. I was doing that at the mall at Hats. My son was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Look if I could do it better." Yeah, I definitely like to compare it. There are some stuff, some pretty pricey items that I see, and I'm like, I could definitely do better than that. All right. All right. Good morning, Hector from Guadalajara, Jalisco. All right. Now, oh wait, hold on. I keep on forgetting this piece of information I need to put up. Sorry about that. All right. One last thing. All right. One last thing before we get into the light box. Okay. Yep. And then Shamika. Length times width. Yep. All right. I like math. All right. I went pretty far in mathematics. So this part of the analyzing, this part of the technical side of embroidery, I actually like it. That's why I it's a fun day for me when I teach the technical side of embroidery. Okay. Real quick in the description, I have these swatches available for download. Okay. They're available so you could download them. You can analyze them. You can maybe tweak your own, change them up a bit. Okay. Now, okay, let me just make my announcement is for group members. All right. So we have the YouTube group members. It's 19.99 a month. Okay. With the group members, I'm going, you had these files since last night. Okay. But today slash tomorrow, I'm also going to include a PDF that goes with the swatches. All right. So here, when I'm talking about all these notes and information that we're going to go over today, all right, I'm going to transfer all these notes onto a PDF. Okay. And I'm going to include it. All right. So for those who wants more amplifying information, okay, on top of the swatches, okay. So if you want the notes that I have on top of this, um, you could become a member, and I already have the notes, so I'm just gonna turn it into a PDF. All right, work on it in InDesign, kind of make it look nice and pretty, okay, and then they'll be available by tomorrow. All right, just as a FYI. But for those who are just following along today's show, you could download. Okay, I have the three main swatches. So the red swatches that you see here on screen, I have those available. Okay, so as we're going over the information, all right, you could follow along. Also, if you do go back, okay, if let's say you go for round two and look at the class again, it's kind of easier to follow along. All right. All right, now let's go into the light box. All right. If you have any questions, make sure to put a Q next to it if you have a question. That way I could kind of monitor it. All right. All right. Let me start here. Let me just turn my computer a bit so I could see it. All right. I think we're good. I think the lighting looks good here. All right. Let's go. Let's start with these are the ones we're going to talk about. All right. Let's talk about the beginning. All right. This is like the genesis of stitches. Let's zoom in a bit. All right, so these top ones, we're all familiar with these stitches, right? This is the world famous run stitch. Okay, so everything about embroidery is pretty much just one stitch. Okay, everything is one stitch. Let me just find this piece of note that I'm looking for right now. All right, so from the top, okay, from the top, if you're a super expert, you could probably guess what's the millimeters. It's pretty small. Let me see if I could get a focus here. All right, I think we're good here. All right, I would say this is the minimum of a stitch you want to make. Okay, so I got my notes here. Okay, as we're writing our notes, I'll write it down here. Okay, so in embroidery, okay, the safe one stitch. So if I'm talking about one stitch, Hold on, let me fix myself right here. All right, in embroidery, one stitch, it's connect, and then one stitch. All right, everything that we're going to talk about is based on one stitch. Okay, everything is one stitch. Okay, and then when you group them together, now they become a group of stitches, and then we give it a name. Okay, we could either call it a running stitch, a sand stitch, a fill stitch, and these other stitches that we have here down below. Okay, so we have one stitch connecting. It's going to the next one. Okay, going to the next one. So this is what we call a walking stitch, a running stitch. Okay, so this top one, the one I have here, and if you're following along, also if you have the file, uh, this top one, okay, let me see. This picture that I have here does have the nodes. Okay, this one here is 1.5 millimeters length. Okay, so we're going to use this word length a lot of times because everything is based. All your stitches is based off what is your length. This is one length. So in this first example, 1.5 millimeters makes a stitch. Okay, I would say this is your minimum. Okay, of course you could go smaller, but you don't want to remain that small. You could taper down this small. Okay, 1.5, 1.5. That's what's happening here on this top. And then just one FYI, like an advice that I would tell is if you do make a swatch, one of these swatches, I like to staple them. Like you can see, I have them stapled. I like to staple them on a cardstock. So this is a can't remember what. This is a 110-pound cardstock paper. All right, so pretty good size. I like working with cardstock. It keeps a lot of my fabric. So I like to do this. I like to staple it on cardstock. That way, when I could write notes, okay. Later, when I do my PDF, I'm gonna attach it on the backside, the PDF, and then you could write notes. You could put any information about why you saved it, settings that you had. All right, but most important, when you store them, you could stack them all up here, and they're all nice and neat. All right, all right. So length, okay. Most important thing we're gonna talk about today is length, okay, from one stitch to another. So that's what we're talking about here. Okay, so here on this swatch, okay, here it's kind of hard to tell, and I did stitch it on felt, and felt is like a little fuzzy. All right, so you might want to also do this type of swatch, maybe on a twill, something that's very tight, so your stitches could kind of stand out a bit. Okay, but let me zoom in again. Okay, all right, you could tell this top one. Okay, top one, you could tell that is very tight, right? 1.5, very small, very, very small here. Okay, I would say there are certain situations, all right, but it's not common that you use a 1.5. Okay, now the software by default it likes to put your running stitch at a 2.5. Okay, so a 2.5, you'll see this whole line is running at a this top one is running at 1.5. Okay, this second one, that's a 2 millimeter. All right, from up close here, from where I'm at, I could definitely tell the difference. Okay, I don't know how good you can see. And then the third line, that's my 2.5. Okay, that's my 2.5. And when I'm comparing it, you could compare it. All right, they're like day and night. All right, up close. All right. Then my fourth line. Okay. So that's 2, 2.5, 3. Okay. 3 millimeters. Then we go 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. This one here, this bottom one, this one that I'm pointing at. All right. Let me tell you how much that long one is. I got it pulled up right here. Give me 1 second. Actually, I'm gonna pull it. I'm gonna pull it up right now on the software. All right. So here, this top one. Okay, you could see my settings where it says stitch value. It says length. Okay. Right on my object properties. Okay, so that first one, 1.5. Second one, 2, 2.5, 3, 4. Now I'm just jumping by increments of 1 millimeter. 5, 6, 7, 8. So I went all the way to 8. All right. And then after 8, it goes back to a 2.5, just so you could kind of see the difference between a 8 and a 2.5. All right. Now the thing with 8, okay, uh, now it's long stitches. It might get a little, it could snag up. It's not as tight. So once you go at an 8, you run the risk of being kind of loose. Okay. And then we go 8. This one here, if you stitch it out, it's all done in one stitch. So that's why I have those jumping stitches on the sides until we get to this one here. This is a triple stitch. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, triple stitch. And then we have a back stitch, stem stitch, and then this was like a crisscross stitch right here. All right. Just to kind of show you that there's other types of running stitches also. All right. All right. Let's go back to the. All right. So this long one. See, yep. This long one here, you can see that different, that 8 millimeter. You can compare this 8 down below with a 2.5. So one 8 millimeter stitch equals 1, 2, 3. Okay, about 3 of the 2.5. All right, just a little above. But by the time it pulls each other, all right, they're about 3 stitches. So if I line it up, yeah, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you could just kind of tell the difference. All right, so very handy to have something like this because you might not be able to tell the difference between a 2.5 and a 4 if you're just kind of looking at it without a reference. But having a reference like this, okay, um, I like using the color red. Okay, I used to use dark colors like black, but what happens if you do your swatch, this one like with a black, uh, now your stitches kind of gets lost with the shadows. Okay, so here if I have a shadow, I'm not going to confuse it with my red thread. So that's why I kind of transitioned and started using my swatches in red, just so I don't confuse my shadow, any dark spaces, with a dark thread. Okay, and then you can also, if you're making a swatch, you can also use the other decorative stitches that your software has. Okay, or you could use motif stitches to kind of test different motifs that your software has also. Okay, but if so this one here, so these swatches, the red ones, they're available, okay, for download. But if you're gonna download it and stitch it out, it's all being ran in one stitch until it gets to these decorative stitches. All right, once it gets down to the triple stitch, the stem stitch, okay, now it just makes a cut. So you can see where it kind of ties in here in the beginning. All right. All right. So very useful. Okay. Very useful. Um, I like to go, I think this was, if I'm not mistaken, let me see, width 4 inches in width. Okay, 4 inches. That way, I don't like making them too small. Okay, that way you could kind of get a a good view of that running stitch. All right, so very, very useful to have. Okay, and then I see your question, TMG. Can you explain the variable run? Okay, that one here. Okay, very, very good question. All right, let's transfer to the software. Okay, so here you see the variable run length. Okay, you see it checked it. You see it checked off. That's used to that's really like a safety mechanism for your computer or for your machine. Okay, what that means, let's go to a bigger stitch. Okay, let's say for example this one here. So these white dots, these are the nodes, or not the nodes, these are the needle penetration. This is where my needle's coming into the fabric. Okay, so what variable run length, let's say we're running 5 millimeters here. When it gets to the end, okay, instead of running another 5 millimeter, it's gonna adjust itself so it could fit in that last little space. And what it's saying is don't go below. So in this situation, oh, the length is 7 millimeters. Here it's telling the software, hey, don't go below a point 0.8. Okay, you don't want to go too small, because if you go too small, you might get a either a needle break or a or you might thread break. Okay, so it's kind of protecting itself. And then the chord gap, that's dealing, once you deal with circles. All right, how much of a roundness your stitches could have. Okay, so variable run is just going to adjust itself at the end of the run. Okay, we see that a lot in our next one too when we talk about the fill stitches. All right, good question there. All right, now let's see. So this one pretty straightforward, right? The run stitch, I mean, it's pretty much this, the length. Okay, so here, um, length 1.5, 2. These are like your most common ones. 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I went to 7, 8. All right, I took it all the way to 8, kind of so you could see. So here, once we get to the software, well, let me zoom out. All right, so of course here, increase stitches, your stitches increase. Number of stitches. And then here, number of stitches decreases. Okay, because you're doing less, you're using up less space. Okay, right now it doesn't really matter because we're just doing a run stitch. All right, it might not seem like nothing right now, but once we're doing fill stitches, okay, it plays a big role. Okay, this number of decreased stitches, okay, now multiplies itself by a lot. Okay, all right, so okay, run stitches. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, pretty much run stitches. Um, there's only one big setting, and that's the length. And then the variable length, usually I don't mess with that setting. Okay, the software kind of knows its safety spot right there. Okay, unless you have a reason why. Okay, but for the most part, some of the variable type settings, it's usually pretty safe to go with. Okay, all right, so that's that right here. Okay, now let's transition and go into our sand stitch. Okay, let me find my swatch for that. Okay, so this one here, very useful right here. Right, this swatch right here. Let's zoom in. All right, so what we have here, okay, this first one here, this is your 1.5 millimeter. All right, so as you can see, very thin compared to your 7. Well, let me verify. Okay, let me verify these numbers real quick. Let's go to the software. Let me verify this is my sense that this is how it looks like. All right, first stitch. Mm, mm. Let me switch over to metric. All right. Yeah, so I'm looking at my width here, bottom right. Tells me my width. Okay, so I'll start with a 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, usually you could go higher than 8 millimeters. You could go 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe. Probably 12 is, your maximum, depending on your machine. Okay, but to me, these are like safe. This is your safe number. The 8 is kind of like the area that I like to kind of keep my stuff at. Okay. Um, Here I made the same runs, so it's the same. It's just kind of turned around just to kind of give perspective, so you could kind of see it at a different angle. Okay, that's why I made it. I flipped it up like this, but it's just copied and paste, turned around the other side, and just made it a little less wider. Okay, 1.5, 2, 3. Okay, so we'll come back here to the settings here, but let's look at the actual stitch out. All right. And then, Barb, thank you for bringing this up right here. All right. Awesome explanation stitches. I have the Wilcom book, but not to see an actual demonstration explanation session. Yep. All right. So let me show you the book that Barb is talking about. Okay. I'm pretty sure you're talking about this book that it's like a lot of information that I have prepared to show, and then sometimes I forget to put out info. So thank you for reminding me. Okay. So we got this book here. All right. Let me know if this is the book that you're talking about. All right. Now, no matter what software you have, okay, you could have any software, even the most cheapest free software in the world. Okay. This book will still be very useful. Okay. This kind of just it just talks about embroidery in general. So this is for, this is the Wilcom E 4.5. Okay. It pretty much just breaks down everything. All right. Anything you want to learn about embroidery. All right. So you can see it just has a bunch of stuff. All right. Let me see. Yeah. They have a free downloadable PDF. Okay. You could search for it. Uh, Wilcom Embroidery Studio User Guide PDF. Okay. You could get it for free. So you could, you don't have to purchase it. But I'm old school. I like to have a book and kind of make notes into it. Okay, I have like certain chapters that I really dig into that I use. Okay, so very useful here. Anytime you need amplifying information or certain type of, if there's a certain um, setting or something, you could go straight here and kind of see the breakdown. Okay, and a lot of times all the settings and all the software they're the same. They're probably just named differently. Okay, they just gave it like their own software name. All right, all right. Let's look at sand stitches. All right, let's talk about these now. Okay. So the thinnest you want to go. Okay. And when I'm saying the thinnest you want to go, that's kind of like in a straight line thinness. Okay. You could taper down and get a little smaller than that. Okay. But if you're running long sand stitches, this is probably the shortest you want to go. Okay. So You could probably use this thinness if you want to get into details in certain areas. Also, you could drop down the stitch, um, the weight of the stitch. So instead of using a 40, this here is a 40 weight. Okay, if you're going very tiny, you might want to go with a 60 weight or a smaller needle. All right, but you can see kind of like how we're getting a little bigger, all the way to 8. All right, you see. So here, when we're talking about sand stitches, all right, this is where we start getting into the length times width area. Okay, if we were to zoom in, let's say we zoom in. Okay, if we zoom in, we'll look like something like this right here. Okay, this is what we'll look like. Okay. This is how a sand stitch is broken down. Okay, this is what it looks like. Hold on, let me zoom out. All right. So we're going from, let me change color right here. Let's do this highlighter. Okay. So we're going connects. These are my connections. All right. So we're going from here, jumping to the next one. Okay. So all these numbers are being controlled. Believe it or not, you are controlling these numbers. Okay. So actually, let me use this one here because this one's too busy here. Okay. So here is my length. Okay. We just talked about length. Okay. So the same thing as the running stitch. This is my length. And now we introduce from this point to this point to this point. So each point, okay. Now we introduce density. Okay, so a lot of us are familiar with density. Okay. Now the word density, I've seen people get confused with it. All right, because they'll say, "Hey, what's wrong with my stitches? It doesn't look right." Somebody will say, "Hey, you need to increase the density." Okay, so sometimes you kind of got to be careful how you word it because density really has two meanings. It has a numerical meaning. Okay, meaning when you're dealing with a numerical reading. So let's say the default density is 0.38. Okay, 0.38. This is your numerical value. Okay. Usually, I like to when I explain density, if I were to tell somebody to fix their density, I'm gonna tell them, hey, fix your numerical value to either X amount of number or lower your numerical value. Because if you just say lower your density, okay, you might lead somebody the wrong way. Okay. Because if we go from 0.38 to 0.18, okay, we have decreased our density. Okay, we have decreased our numerical value density, but our density got tighter. Okay, so some people might call that you increased the amount of density. All right. All right. So by decreasing the numbers, you actually added density. Okay. And I've seen, okay, I know it's kind of confusing, all right, but I've seen it where somebody has said, hey, add density, add more density. But what they really meant, what? Add more density by decreasing the numerical value. Okay, if that kind of makes sense. So kind of be careful if somebody's telling you to increase your density, or okay, because sometimes it has like a double meaning. All right, if that kind of makes sense. All right. All right. So here we have two numbers here. So L and density. Okay, based off this. Okay. So the lower the numerical value, the more stitches we'll have. Okay. So more lower value, more stitches. For example, for example, 3D puff, okay, we're at 0.18, 0.20. Okay, you're gonna have way more stitches than just regular flat stitches. Higher value. So this lower value, this would be for 3D puff. And then higher value would be something like a polo shirt where you don't require uh, as dense values. Polo shirt, less stitches. All right. And there's one more item I want to include here, and that is the angle here. All right. So of course, if we're doing this letter I right here or a straight stitch, this would be 0 degrees. So let's say angle. Okay. Because sometimes we don't really talk about the angle, but angles are there. Okay. So here you could see it's running, okay, 0 degrees. And then it goes back to whatever density you applied, it's going to go back. Okay, if you put 0.38, it's going to find its location, settle itself, run 0 degrees, and then keep on doing that over and over. All right, so sand stitches, we have, these are our main two numbers, length, okay, and our density. Okay, angle can play, this is usually like a behind the scene setting that we don't really think about, but there are certain designs where we kind of want to bring in angle and want to talk about this angle on certain types of designs. Okay, so let's look into our numbers right here on the software. Okay, so every time we go from, let's say from a running stitch, every time we go from a running stitch to now a sand stitches, now our setting opens up. Okay, now we have to include more type of information. All right. And then Barb, that's the book. We'll also have the one for Hatch. All right. Yep, yep. FYI, for those who want information on the Wilcom book, on the description, I have an Amazon link. This is items that we carry here in the shop. Okay. I like to put items that we actually use. Like I don't want to put just stuff that I think might be helpful. Like it's stuff that we actually use. So if you want to visit that our Amazon page, I have a section of books that I use. Okay. Also, I want to add more books because this whole year, all right, I went very book heavy. I read a bunch of books over and over and over and over and over. So I definitely want to share a lot of those books. But there are some of the books that I have there, and the Wilcom book is you can view it there too. Okay. And then when you see the Wilcom, it also has the Hatch book there too. Okay. All right, why so much explanation? It's not a science. Just press your keyboard, the F1 key, and there's. All right, it's that easy. All right, so if you want to push F1, okay, yep. All right. So people learn different ways. Okay. You probably found your kind of your method of learning. Okay. So always different ways to learn certain items. Okay. Now, okay, F1 or the computer, you don't always have access to it. Sometimes you're in the middle of a project and you don't really have time to go to a computer, or sometimes it's quicker if you have resources, right? Visual resources, not something from a computer, but if you have an actual stitch out where you could physically see the difference between stitches, okay, it might be more useful than seeing it on the screen or reading about it. Okay, so some people could learn by reading, okay, but other people like to learn by actually doing. Okay, so the more you know, right, the more you break something down, okay, like I kind of said in the earlier today, the way I like to learn is the whys. Okay, a lot of times information is going to be given to you, right, but you want to know why. Why do we do it like that, right? That's the reason why I'm going this deep right now. All right. All right. Then Lilia question: is it okay to use the adjust stitch spacing option to decrease? All right, that's a good question. I'll bring that one up right now. Okay. And then I am Quay. Good morning. I have Chroma. Can you explain the setting of underlay density stitch? Yep. All right, we'll get into that too. All right, good questions. All right, let me see where I'm at. Let's get into the software right now. Let's break down these sand stitches. Okay. Let's start. Let's go with this bigger one here. All right, so I'm looking here on my object property. All right, as you can see, I have all my numbers here. All right, and I'm telling you, when I first started, a lot of these numbers overwhelming. Okay, information overload. It's like I didn't want to push anything, or I didn't want to change any of my digitizer's settings because I felt like I would mess everything up. Okay, of course, if you are going to make changes, you want to select your objects, all your objects that you're going to make your changes on. Okay, so you could select multiple objects. Okay, of course, by hitting control. All right, so here, my spacing. Okay, spacing, this is another word for density. All right, so when we zoom in, okay, let's put our nodes here. Okay, if I want to open it up, okay, let's say I really want to open it up to 7.5. You'll see how we'll have more elbow room now. So when I push enter, right, it opened up. Okay, now you can see through it. Okay, so let's go back to 0.38. Okay, now it closed it up. All right. So of course, density. Okay, everything is based off density, your thickness, and auto spacing. Okay, so there's Lelia asked about auto spacing, right? So you see how it just changed right there. What it's going to do is going to adjust it and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to adjust it to a point where you're going to be good. Okay, where and a lot of it, auto spacing, very useful if you're doing like curves and turns. And I really don't like using it. Okay, I don't like using it because at sometimes it might put too much spacing, so you might find some gaps, and I would rather control the gaps. So yeah, saying adjust at a 90%. Okay, that's just you telling the software, hey, if we got any stitches that are too close, just space them out a bit. Okay, so let me see. Right here, 528, 458. So when I did auto adjusting, okay, if you see my stitch count, so under my color object list, if you see my stitch count, it has it at 458. And then as soon as I click auto spacing, it's gonna add like about 100. So let me click it. All right, so 528. Okay, so it added more stitches here. Okay, All right. So like I said, sometimes it's used for curves. Okay, but what I use for curves, I would just click up here. If you're looking at the top of my screen, all right, I just pulled it up right there. All right, shortening. All right, the shortening stitch, that kind of adjusts it right there. So that makes up for the auto spacing, is the shortening stitch. Reduce stitch bunching in tight curves by shortening stitches. All right, so I used to use auto spacing for certain curves, but then I found it more useful just to use the shortening. So pretty much I have shortening as a default in my settings. All right. All right. Now let me click on this. So that's okay. Here, and then you could just change the length H. Okay. Uh, the width. Let me just hide all. Put this by itself. All right. Here, the width. Okay. Here, I would just change it down on the bottom right. Okay. You see where it says width. Okay. You could put it down to a 5 millimeter. It'll get a little thinner, H. Or you could grab the nodes. Okay. And then adjust to according to your design. Okay. Whatever you're tracing. All right. Of course, it'll look all choppy like this. All right. So those are really the main settings. And then we talked about angles. You could change your angles. Let's say you want to do some crazy stuff. Ah, all right. If you want to make your angles like at this angle for some reason, all right. There's certain designs where, requires certain angles, right? All right. Unhide all. So here on the sand stitch, okay, let me see if I could find other items that we might want to break down. All right. Fills, spacing, okay, auto count, sand count, special, underlay. Okay, we'll talk about the underlay right now. All right. So underlay. All right. Actually, let's bring this down so we could have everything in view. All right. Of course, underlay. All right. Um, let's do something right here. Unhide all. Let's select all minus this one. Delete. Okay. I want to show you some cool stuff right now. All right. So our underlay. Okay. So the wider your sand stitch, the more underlay you want it, okay? Because you want to put a base underneath to keep it nice and firm and strong. All right. So first underlay, double zigzag. Okay. So you can control the underlay too here. All right. So the same thing. Okay. Spacing. That's our density. Okay. So you'll see density kind of spelled out differently. All right. So now for underlay, we have options. All right. So that's I know I like to explain it because I know when I started, this is the stuff that kind of confused me. Okay. Because I would see spacing and I would say, hey, what are they talking about spacing? It's just another word for density. All right. So here you can see that underlay is pretty dense. Okay. Let me show you something cool here. All right. Some softwares have this. I'm going to click on the stitch list. Okay. Stitch list here. All right. Now it has all these numerical values here. All right. This is what our machine reads here. Our machine reads X's and Y's. So this is the whole route that our machine reads. Okay. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna uh, I just want to expose the underlay. Okay. So let me put a tatami. No. double zigzag with a edge run. Okay. What I'm gonna do, I just wanna show the underlay. So I'm gonna delete all the actual sand stitches. Okay. So here I could select any stitch that I want. All right. And I'm gonna guess that it starts around here. Let's select all these stitches. Bam. All right. What I did, I'm like digging deep in the software, and I'm selecting the actual stitches here. So I I know my sand stitches run after my underlay, so I just started from the back and deleted all those stitches. Okay. So if I delete this one, oops. All right. Include that one. See, edit. All right. Bam. All right. All right. These are my underlay. Okay. Let's go ahead. Let's select this. Let me click out of the stitch list. Okay. So now I can control it here, right? So let's say I want a double zigzag, but I don't need this much. Okay, let me put a little less. Okay, you can open this up, put a 6. Oops, that didn't work. 6 millimeters spacing. Oops. Oh, okay, I see what it does. It wants to add those stitches that I just deleted. It'll. All right, so that might not work. Let me see. Yeah, it's gonna add those stitches I just deleted. All right. All right. So let's break this down. Okay. So if we're analyzing our numbers here, okay, these are just my underlay here. Okay. So I have a spacing of 3 millimeters. So when I pull out the ruler, okay, from here all the way to up here, okay, should be close to 3. Yeah, because we're the other one. This one is the return sand stitch. So the double zigzag. So we're looking at and right here. All right. So we're close to 3. Okay. That's because I'm not selecting it perfectly. All right. Escape. All right. So that's where we get our spacing 3 millimeters. And then our length, 12 millimeters. All right. Same thing here. Okay. M. Well, see how wide we are? Width 8. Length 12 M. All right. So that's the widest that it'll go. All right. So, and then the edge run. Okay. Let me just bring back all these sand stitches that I'm going to bring. Okay. So this is my edge run out here. Okay. You can see my, and then the same thing, you can control it. Okay. If you find that your underlay is slipping out, okay, like it's kind of sticking out, poking itself out, you could control it. Okay. You could control it. It shows you the margins. Okay. Here we come back to minimum length. So this is similar to your variable length. Okay. Let me just. All right. So same thing. Chord gap that deals with kind of when you're bending, making curves, circles. Okay. Now I really wouldn't mess with the chord gap. Okay, because you could. This is one setting that you can mess stuff up if you start messing with the chord gap. Okay. That's one that unless you have a definite good reason to mess with the chord gap. Okay, that's just dealing with your curve and how much of a stitch. Okay, it'd be very rare that at a certain point or a certain curve, something something sticking out where you would have to change this. Okay, you would rather decrease density than to start changing your chord gap. All right, um, so the same information that we had on the spacing, the length, and then your angle here. Okay, so we could also change our angles here. Let's put 60, right? So it'll change our angle of our dent. You could kind of see our underlay under here. Okay, you could change. Might be some cool reasons why you might want to change your angle for your underlay. Okay, but for the most part, just keep it uniform. Okay, with the traditional. Okay. All right. So sand stitch. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Let's go with our third one now. All right. Uh, let's go to the light box. Okay. Let's go to our third item. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions regarding sand stitch. But same thing, right? Length and our distance, and then our underlay is kind of controlled with those same settings also. All right. And then Lilian, this is great information. I figured this out by trial and error. All right. Of course, that is the best way, right? That's really the best way, and I think the only way to learn embroidery is to test stuff out, uh, document what works, document what doesn't work, and then use that information on your next project. Okay. Uh, and then give me one sec. Let me go back to this question. Make sure I didn't miss anything. I have Chroma. Can you explain the settings of underlay density? Stitch length, run stitch length, insert zigzag. All right, so that's what we're talking about right now, the density underlay. Okay, so the underlay uses that information on density, stitch length, run stitch. Okay. Oh, give me one sec. All right, hold on. I might have to do a. I'm gonna have to do a quick battery check, battery change. All right. Hey, shout out to my brother Miguel, Van Nuys, California. All right. So I know it's pretty early over there, right? 7 in the morning, Cali. And then Aldell, if you are using a stiff material like broadcloth, would you still use a lot of underlay for an 8 millimeter? I wouldn't say a lot, but you would use. I would say you would still use your traditional. I like to use once I go 8 millimeters. If it's on a flat, I use a double zigzag with an edge run just to keep it its actual shape. And then definitely a good question. I have Chroma and Hatch. Can I do this on these programs? Yes, definitely. So every software, okay, every software. Let me change the battery while I'm answering this question. Every software all has one thing in common. Okay, they are all controlled by one stitch, and it's that first stitch that we talked about. Okay, everything deals with the length of a stitch. After that, everything is all kind of like a direction of that stitch. Okay, hold on. Find this battery. All right. The only difference between software is the location where the settings are at. All right. I definitely next year I do have Chroma. I have the free one, the Inspire. I think that's what it's called. I'm gonna mess with it. All right. That's on my to-do list next year, like January next year. And I definitely I'm gonna get in Brilliance. All right, because I get a lot of questions on the Brilliance, so I want to mess with that also. But yes, everything we're talking about here is just embroidery in general. It doesn't matter which software you're working with, okay? Because everything deals with stitch length, density, angles. All right, let me see if we're back to normal. All right, good question there. All right, back in action right here. All right, now let's talk about the fill stitch. All right, now fill stitch has a little bit more settings. Okay, it's a little bit more options, a little more stuff that's happening. Okay, let me kind of show you. Let me find. Give me 1 second. All right, let me show you two versions that I have right here. Okay, flip this up. All right, zoom in a bit. All right, just check out this gradient, right? Let me see if you could see this gradient, how on the top left, we're kind of fully dark. Okay, you can't really see underneath, right? You can't really see the white. And the reason why I did it black stitch here, so you could kind of see the contrast, okay, between black and white. Okay, let me zoom in a tad bit more. All right, I think we're good. All right, yep, good view. All right, so here, okay, here we are controlling the length, okay, the length. The top left of the dark one, that's kind of working with the standard stitches that the software puts, okay? Usually the safe numbers, okay? A lot of digitizers, a lot of the good digitizers, that's what they kind of work with that one. All right, and then as you kind of move towards the right, okay, let's look at this file. Let's look at the actual file so we can see what we're looking at. Okay, here, there's no underlay, okay? And the reason why I didn't put any underlay, so you could kind of see, so we can see through it, right? Where it's getting less dense and longer lengths. So let's look at what we're looking at here. Okay, so that's this one here. Make this a little smaller. So let's start with this top one. Okay. Uh, all right. Spacing 3 millimeters. Okay. What I want to show here, what I'm showing on this top one, this top picture is I want to focus on the length. Okay, 4.5. Okay. This is like a an open view of the length of our stitches. All right. So here we start at the traditional 4 millimeter length. The second one, 4.5, and everything under is 4.5. Okay, that's how I broke it down. So this first row is 4 millimeters. Everything under is 4 millimeters. Here, 4.5, everything under is 4.5. This one, 5, 6, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 8. Okay, and then everything under is 8. Okay, and then here, going down each row, my density or my spacing, 0.4. So this is these are the software standard. Okay, and then roller, I'm about to answer your question right now. Right, it's a good one. The stitch length affect stitch count. All right, so this is where we're gonna hit that home run right now because we're about to put all this information and see kind of like the big picture of how we get to these stitch counts. All right, so here my rows, zero point 0.4, everything here is 0.4. Okay, so you kind of see how, all right. Here, 0.5, zero point 0.5 is my density. Everything down the line is 0.5. Okay, so my length is increasing and my density is increasing down here. My density value is increasing, which at the very end, okay, when all my numbers are high, when my length is high and my density is high, okay, that's how we get this view right here, okay? All right, so that's how we're getting this view. Okay, so the darker, the more dense, or the more you want something to be covered, okay, you're going to add more density, smaller length. Now, before we get back into the software right now, okay, there are times where can we tell the difference between this box and let's say this box here, okay? So if I'm looking at it, that's why I think these swatches are very important because you can analyze something. You could say, hey, how can I decrease my stitch count? Can I go down? Um, can I raise the density value and would it affect my design? Okay, so in certain situations, especially let's say we had a gray garment. Let's say we weren't working on white, but we were working on gray. Maybe instead of having our density and our lengths at this level, maybe we could start right shifting down to a different category. All right, or maybe we just need a little blend. We don't need full coverage. Okay, maybe we're working on a garment that's black and it just needs kind of like a shade of black. So we could be here. There would be a purpose. Okay, or maybe here, right? Maybe we don't increase the length all the way so, but we decrease the sand stitch, the density. Okay, so by using one of these swatches, it'll help you make choices and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I could eliminate 200 stitches, which probably doesn't sound much, but if you're doing large quantities, then it could start adding up. Okay, but let's see the difference of stitch count. Okay, so let's get into the software. Okay. All right, so here it's telling me my stitch count, right? So when I'm at the, what's this one? Okay, let me click here. Okay, so here, 1081. And then each one of these boxes, I put them at 1 inch square. Okay, so they're a 1 inch square. It's also, you could also kind of have an idea and do your mathematics. Like if you're trying to estimate like a stitch count, you could look at a design and kind of have an idea. Okay, you could use something like this to kind of give you an idea how much stitches a certain project's going to be. Okay, eventually you get to the point where you could look at a garment, especially if you do tons of hats. You can look at a piece of garment and already have an idea how much stitches you're going to use. Okay, but this is also a way to kind of estimate and measure the height and width of your design, like if it has a certain amount of fills and sand stitches. Okay. All right, but here we have 1081 stitches. And then when we get to the next one, so this one, the only change we're changing the length, okay, to a 4.5. So we drop about 80 stitches from here to here just by a simple change of 4.5. Okay. Then you drop it again. Okay. You increase the length to 5. Okay. Now we're at 900. Okay. And then so on. 800. Right. 822. 746. Right. Our numbers are really changing. Now, to go all the way up here, okay, so if we're going with a length, this might not be ideal. if you want to put your length of 8 millimeters, because now your stitches are real long. Okay, now you're working with long stitches, unless you have a reason to go that long. Okay, but there's always reason. There could be certain designs that require that. Okay, but kind of here 6, right? That's kind of safe zone here. All right, now going down, let's say you want to maintain that size. Let's say we want to go, let's say we're good with a 5. Let's say we want to go with a 5. And then you could kind of play around with the density now. Okay, so same thing here. If we start at 1081 and we decrease or increase the numerical value of our density, okay, we'll go from 1081 to 856. All right, so that's a big jump compared to our length. So we're getting more, we're decreasing more our stitch count with our density by tweaking our density. Okay. Now, if you tweak both, if you kind of say, hey, I want to go 5 millimeters and I'm going to decrease my density, okay, to maybe a 0.6. Okay. Let's check it out. Let's see how that third box. Okay. So if you look at that third box, you could kind of see through it. You could kind of see white right between it, right? But if you go above 1, right? So if we go above 1, let's choose this one. Let's choose this one. Okay. So our stitch count 726 compared to this first one that we had, which is 1081. All right. Might not seem a lot, right? But we're just dealing with a 1 by 1. Okay. Maybe you might have a design that's bigger. And once you start multiplying by quantity, okay, your numbers could start moving exponentially. And that's every stitch counts time wise. Okay. All right. Let me see this question here. TMG, have you ran the tatami swatch test with the bulk there? No. So that is on my to-do list. Okay. So I am going to do more swatches. Okay. So thank you for this question. All right. Because I always forget information and you always help me remind me with your questions. Okay. So thank you. I appreciate your questions because it kind of brings a lot of stuff that I already have planned and I forget to put it out. Okay. So today we're kind of real getting real into the details of our settings. Okay, the whys. Okay, but this is going to be a two-part series. Okay, so next week we're gonna apply this and we're gonna actually use this information. Okay, we're going to make a circle patches, rounded patches, borders around it, okay? And we're going to kind of see the difference. Should we use this density or should we use this density? And what's the difference of stitch count? Okay, so it is going to transition to next week. Okay, so definitely today is a day where you want to come next week. Okay, you might want to rewatch it just to kind of refresh the information. So next week we're just diving and we're applying this information. All right, all right. Let's get back here. Um, all right. Uh, so purpose of swatch tests, it could kind of give you an idea and make decisions. Okay, it could help you make a decision. Can or maybe something is looking too thick on a polo shirt. Okay. Maybe a design is looking too thick on a polo shirt and you're looking at it and you're like, well, would it be reasonable to change the density? Would it be reasonable to change the length? Then you use your swatch. Well, what would be a safe, right? Depending on the color of the garment. Okay. So the sometimes the color on the garment that you're stitching on could play a role on what decisions you're making. All right, let's break down. Let's go to the light box. Let's break down the tatami stitch. Okay, because this is really where a lot of our settings come from. All right, let me see if I have my picture right here. The one I have for download is this one here. Let me see where I moved my. All right, so if you're following along with the download, all right, it's very subtle. Let me see if you could see it here. All right, yeah, you actually have a pretty good view here. All right, top left, very dense. That's the software standard. Okay, and you can see it has that running stitch down below, and I like that running stitch because it gives you a reference on how much visible you can see through. All right, so top left is fully covered, and then you move down bottom right, kind of see items sticking out. All right, so I do encourage you to analyze these swatches. Okay, uh, stitch one out for yourself. This is all done in one stitch, so there's no cuts. So that's why you see the jumping stitches there. Yeah, just makes life a whole lot easier when there's no cuts or anything. So uh, definitely next week we're gonna make swatches. We're gonna make patches. We're gonna make swatches that can be used for patches. All right, so it's gonna be a good one next week. So we're gonna take all this information, and then T-Town, I got your question there. Can you go over your print preview setup? All right. All right, I'm just gonna finish with one last thing, and then we'll go with questions. All right, because I need to talk about these settings for the tatami stitch. All right, let me find my paper. And then as a bonus, the channel members, I included this one too. All right, this is like a bigger one. This one here is like 22,000 stitches. All right, so it's a little longer to run than this one. This one's a quick one, but it's a good reference sheet. All right, good reference one. This one just has a little bit more options, and then it shows you the length, the different lengths. All right. All right. And a lot of this information that I'm kind of compiling, okay, it's all gonna lead to the book that I'm going to write next year. All right. So for those who are channel members, you're going to see a lot of just the PDFs, and those are like the drafts and the pre kind of like the pre-production to the book. All right. So I highly encourage those who want to become a member. All right. All right. Let me just find my last piece of note. Okay, because this one here leads to the fill stitch, which I have somewhere. All right. All right. I had it somewhere. We'll use this one. This is like a preview of how I'm making my PDFs. All right, let me show you. It's like a graph, right? It's like a chart, right? Length. These are all lengths. The top, it's like a graph. Top side is length. This side is the density. Okay, and then we have the information, stitch count. Okay, stitch count, just definitions and good useful items just to have as a reference, all right? All the information you need. And this one's for the tatami stitch. So this is kind of like a preview of how I kind of start before I turn it into a PDF and make it look nice and pretty. All right. All right, here it goes. This is the one I'm looking for. All right. So tatami stitch is your fill stitch. When you need to fill a certain area, okay, you're going to use the tatami stitch, fill stitch. Okay. So same thing. Okay. Same thing. We are using length, the length of our stitch. So each of these dots, is where the needle's hitting. And then here, okay, so we talked about the variable length. Okay. When once it's closing up on itself, it's gonna adjust. So when you see that setting variable length, okay, that's another one. I'll put a little asterisk next to it. Okay. If I put an asterisk next to it, that means me personally, I wouldn't change that. Okay. So there's two settings I wouldn't change unless I have a reason for it. Okay, unless there's a good reason. And then chord gap, which we talked about earlier. Okay, chord gap. You could kind of read up on the. It might not have a H. It might just be. Okay. Let me see. Check. Uh, yeah, it does have an H. All right, I'm good. Those are the two settings I wouldn't touch unless for a certain reason. All right, length. Length. That's just the software going length. Okay, and then here, so same thing as the similar to the sand stitch. Okay, from corner to from point, I'll just say point to point. Mm, This is your density. Okay, so same concept. The only thing you're filling up a bigger space. Okay, because it goes, yeah. Sometimes you might think that this is density, this first one, but it's not. It's just halfway on its route. Okay, so it's from here to here. All right, that's density. Okay, let's see. All right, so I'll kind of show a picture here. You see? Yeah, you kind of see the arrows pointing. Bam, bam. All right. So when we're changing our settings, that's really what you're changing. All right. So when I'm saying we're increasing our length, okay, we're making these. Sometimes it's not noticeable. Okay. So let's see. Sometimes it's not noticeable when we're changing our length. Okay. When we're going from 4 to 5. Okay. For some reason, 4 is always the popular one. But sometimes you might tell yourself, hey, what happens if I change it to 5? A length of 5. So when we're talking about lengths, right? And we're talking about millimeters, okay? Are we going to see a difference? Okay, so and then you could go one step further and say, hey, what happens if I change it to 5 millimeter of length from 4 to 5 and change the density from a 0.4 millimeter to a 0.5 millimeter? All right. So sometimes you won't tell of a difference, like the difference will be minor, especially if you're working on a garment that's similar to the actual stitch. All right, so here we're using red and white. So any of the gaps, you might see it, right? So for example, here we see a little bit of white sticking out. Okay, see less white here, less white here. And then as we move towards down, okay, now we see way more white here. All right. So those are the decisions that we're making. Okay. And then one other setting here, tatami. Okay, which you could change it. There's certain situations where you could change it. It's how you want these corners here when it's shifting from one side to another. You can control these two. All right. So I'll show that right now. All right. So when it's changing locations. All right. So let's go to the software and then I'll take some questions. And then roller, yes, that is felt here. It's a good observation. All right, let's talk. Let's go up here. This is like standard. Um, so all of these doesn't have underlay, okay, because I kind of want to show the underneath. All right, let's check our settings. Let's check our settings here. Okay, let's start from the top. Spacing. So we talked about spacing. That's our density. Okay, that's from this point to the next point to the, okay, up here. That's how density is measured. If we were to increase our value, so let's go 1 millimeter. Okay, you'll see how it'll open up. Okay, now we have more elbow room. Okay, let's undo. Okay, so density, okay, that's or spacing. Okay, so you'll see it. Length, okay, that's from one stitch to the next. Okay, oops. Hold on, over here messing stuff up. All right, this was 4, this is 5, all right, and then so on. But let me go to the one that you have available here. This is the one that's downloadable for everybody here. Okay, let me use this one as an example. So this one has underlay. Okay, that's why you see less white here. All right, but you still see white. Okay, see? Oh, wrong one. All right, so let's go here. Let's check out our settings that we have. Okay, so we have our spacing, our density, our length. Okay, from one dot to a next. So if I put nodes here, okay, that's just telling you how long your stitches are. Okay, minimum length. So this is kind of this is the same as kind of like your variable. Okay, that's what's the smallest you want. You don't want any stitches to be smaller than 0.4. Okay, that's what we're telling the software. Okay, this is another one that I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change this setting because that's safe. That's your safe number right there, 0.40. If you're going smaller, you can introduce problems such as thread breaks and needle breaks. Okay, offsets. Okay, this is a cool one here. All right, offset. You could make a pattern. Okay, usually it's at a quarter. Okay, 0.25, 0.25 here. That's so it doesn't have any noticeable pattern. Okay, but there are designs. Okay, where you could add a pattern. Let's put a 0.5, 0.5. All right, so you see how I just gave it a pattern. Maybe if I put it blue, you might see it. All right, or 60.6. All right, some people really play with this. Okay, so here, right, you got this little cool, or you could go 0.75 and, or, all right, so you could give it certain patterns. All right, I don't really mess too much with this patterns. You also have built-in patterns that your software may have. Okay, so you could have decorative patterns that you could have also. When it does it, it's kind of messing around with this offset fraction. Okay, so if that's kind of like something you want to look into, um, that's the way you would kind of adjust your pattern. I've seen people do like certain chains and certain designs to kind of make their fill stitch really pop out. Okay, so this is kind of like very artsy side, decorative, can make your design really pop out in in certain circumstances. All right, so that's where we would mess with the offset. Okay, but here, this is the one that I was kind of talking about. Okay, here our corner, it's shifting from one side to another. You kind of see how it's sharp here. Okay, you can adjust it. Usually you just leave it as standard backstitch. Okay, there are some designs. Usually if you're going like certain rounded type corners, you could use one that's more squared. So if I put it like this, okay, um, feels okay, kind of gives it like a little bit more of a squareness. Let's go back here. Oh yeah. Okay. So you see how sharp this angle's at here? Okay. If I put it here, it's going to make it a little bit more square. Okay, but for the most part, I don't really mess with that one unless there's like a certain curve that you want to work with. Okay, and then this last one, okay, is just diagonal. All right, you're gonna put a real sharp zigzag type stitch. All right, another one where you would be kind of like in a decorative, very detailed type. You're doing it for a reason. All right, so very uncommon for somebody to use the diagonal one. All right, unless you're doing some type of distress kind of design that you want something to look distressed. Okay, this one would be a useful one. All right. All right. So really, those are like the settings, right? Your underlay. We already talked about the underlay. You can control your underlay. One thing I want to show you, your edge run. So here, going down, all right, if you can see it, going from top to bottom, running down, that's our edge run. You can control, well, I won't say all software, but a lot of softwares, you can control. Let's say it's too close, it's sticking out, it's popping out, and you want to push it in. All right, let's over exaggerate. You could push it in. All right, so right there, bam, I pulled it in. Okay, that's really a common one. Even items I've seen at retail stores, I've seen underlay sticking out. Okay, so sometimes you might have the correct underlay, but you have it too close to the border. Okay, and then here, your underlay tatami stitch. Okay, you could control the angle. Usually the angle is perpendicular to your actual stitch. Okay, so here I'm running my stitch H at a 0 degrees. So you can see here, I control the angle here. So on this example, I have it at 0, just so it's all uniform. Okay, H. Okay, T. Okay. If you want it, so right now it's running it at, it's not, it's actually not perpendicular here. Okay, it's at underlay. Okay, 135 degrees. So if I do want to put it perpendicular, you can put 90 degrees. It'll run it perpendicular. Okay. But the software, it kind of defaulted at 135. Okay, but let's say something is not looking straight or something's not kind of getting out of shape, you might want to adjust your underlay. So you're adjusting it here at the angle, and then the same thing, your tatami, your spacing and your length, right? So it's the density. Okay, so since it's underlay, it's all the way at 3 millimeters. Length, all right, it's keeping it safe at 4 millimeters. Okay, you don't want to go too high or else your stitches might stick out. All right, let me see. That's really the settings here. Okay, you have your connectors. You could say whether you want to cut or you don't want to cut. You want to jump. Okay, here I have all this running in one stitch. So if it was introducing a jump stitch, okay, you can control it. You could put off or okay. So for example, here trim after, I just put it off, just in case it wants to trim. It's gonna automatically override and just say, hey, the designer here recommends or has put in do not trim afterwards. All right, so bam. All right, so that's really, and let me see, when you put information, one trim. Okay, so one thing that I like to share, okay, let's see if I could pull myself up right here. All right, let me tell you one thing that I like to share, and then I'll get back to T-Town question right now. But one thing that I like to share, let me pull it up again. I like to share this information because to me, embroidery, digitizing, everything is based off efficiency. All right. So trims, how many trims do you have? So this design, which is available for download, you could download it, create your own swatch, use it as a resource so you can use it if you're making any decisions. Okay. Here it's all done in one trim. Okay. So you push start, you can go take care of business, come back, and this is what 12,000 stitches. Okay. So I like two pieces of information. I always like to put out these two information. How many stitches, how many trims? Okay, two very important, especially if you're in embroidery to make money. Okay, those are your two big questions that you're asking or you're even telling your digitizer, hey, can we minimize the amount of cuts? Okay, because you never know. The digitizer might think you're doing this, for fun, or this is just something that you want to do, maybe, as a side project, but they don't know that you're doing 100 of these, right? So if that's something that you want to kind of that little bit of information, right? Hey, can you minimize stitch count and trims, all right? Even though you are setting conditions to the digitizer, right? Sometimes it is important to put out information like that, all right? And then let me print preview, all right? I got you right here. So T-Town had this good question. All right, I always use a print preview because I like printing stuff out. All right, let's talk about print preview, and then we'll go over questions, and we'll call it a wrap. All right, let me see. Let me switch this around. All right, print preview. All right, so let's say we want to print this out. Okay, you want to write down information on this. Okay, go to print preview. All right, we go to options. You could put portrait, or you go to options. Okay, now every software is different, so you might have different settings and information that you could include. All right, Willcom, they give you everything, any information that you need. Right, you could put approval sheets, and you could go very deep, which I would highly suggest you kind of look into it. Right, if you're going there. Okay, for the most part, if I'm printing something out just for a reference, or I want to save something, maybe I might stitch something out 3 6 months from now, or 3 years from now. I want to keep information and document information. Okay, so here it tells you design. What kind of information do you want? Do you want the outlines, like the outlines when you're digitizing your objects? Okay, do you want to show the stitches? Sometimes I don't put stitches because I just want to see the shape of the design. Your vector, if you have a vector behind it. Okay, usually I don't include the vector. Okay, I don't include application. This is bling. All right. If you do put stitches, true view, draft. Hold on. Oh, product. All right here. All right. At first, it wasn't letting me take this. I take out true view unless I'm doing like a certain type of thinner stitch, right? Something thick like that. So I would put it like this. And zoom. This is the important one. All right, zoom to fit. If you want to make it bigger than what it is, or if you want the actual, well, let's do zoom to fit. Okay, so this is the way you can do it. You could take away the stitches too. So options, put design, remove the stitches. This is how I would normally print it out, right? If you want to include the stitches to kind of show you how it looks, that could. But here I would fill in. So my plan is to fill in all the information, okay, all the settings with all this information. But you could also do true view, zoom the way it looks, zoom 1 to 1. Info, you could put all the info. You could put the full, everything that deals with this. Okay, hold on. Let's go back to options. Full info, sure. Oh, okay. Let me put zoom to fit. All right, there you go. All right. So this is like the normal one that you usually see that your digitizer normally sends to you. Okay. And then you could fill all this information here. Okay. You could give it names and all this information. But the good thing here is that it can tell you how many stitches, how many cuts, how many trims. Here it's in millimeters. If you want to put it in, well, it's already in US. Yeah, so it does it in millimeters. Print preview. Okay. Uh, trims, it tells you the trims. To me, this is the important stuff. I'm looking at trims and stitch count. All right, stitches, 12,000. All right. Two most important information. If you're getting information or you're ordering stitches, a good one is to know how many stitches, how many cuts, how many colors too. Maybe somebody's designing something with 30 colors, okay, and it's gonna be hard to make a profit off something that's um, with a lot of cuts and colors, okay, unless you are charging accordingly. You could also save it as a PDF, okay. So let's say you don't want to print it, you just want to have it. Uh, you could also save it there. All right, good question there. All right, all right. So settings for embroidery. All right, everything revolves around settings. Reason why I wanted to talk about settings today is because I remember when I started digitizing and embroidery, I was overwhelmed when I opened up the software and there was so many options. I was like, how do you know when to make a change? And will I affect something if I change something 0.05 millimeters? Sometimes you won't even tell. You can change something 1 millimeter and you wouldn't even recognize the difference. Sometimes you can change something 1 millimeter, you won't notice, but your stitch count just dropped like 300 stitches without even a noticeable um, reason or something. Okay, so sometimes you can make certain decisions and certain changes if you have resources such as a swatch. Okay, you can kind of guide. You can also have a swatch for customers. You could tell them, hey, how would you prefer, your background to look like? Or you could have swatches with text, fonts, sizes of fonts. Okay, you could have unlimited ways to make swatches, samples, stitch outs. You can make swatches with one type of fabric, and then the same swatch with a more rough or fluffier type fabric. Okay, so the ideas are like endless of all the different types of combinations you can do. All right. So let me see if I have any questions. All right. Uh, and then I am Quade. When I changed my field length from a 2 to a 4 with a 3 millimeter density, the 4 millimeter seemed much better right there. Perfect example, right? You kind of you change it from a 2 millimeter to a 4, right? Because 2 millimeters very tight, right? Very small. You opened it up with a 4 millimeter, okay, with a 3 millimeter density, the 4 millimeter, okay. So it looks like you allowed the design to breathe a bit. Maybe it was so stiff, right? It was probably even kind of pulling itself and crunching itself. And now by you opening up the density okay, you probably let that design breathe a bit. Okay, so definitely, right? Once you understand those settings and like as you say, little small minor tweaks. Okay, it's not like you just changed the whole design completely, right? You made a little bit of a density change and a length change. All right, so perfect example of what we're talking about today. All right, thank you for sharing that information. All right. And then Bevy Gene, I didn't realize the offset changes the pattern. Yep, that's how they go about. So every software has the pre-built patterns that they make, and that's how they usually make it. Is by changing the percentage of that. And Brilliant has patterns to change too, but it's good to know. Yeah, because sometimes you want to create your own, right? You could go all day searching for something, but maybe there's something that you kind of doodled and you kind of have an idea. Hey, how would it look if I do so? So you could enter certain numbers and kind of see how that works. All right. Regular Brady, good morning. Sorry I'm late. All right. It's all good because we have the replay, right? We have the replays going on. All right. Thanks for stopping by. TMG. All right. Awesome info. Yep. Jose Lopez. What's the best cat hoop to get? I've been getting hard problem to hoop with the original cat hoop. It comes with the Yeah, I mean, usually worst case scenario, the hat hoop should be good. Okay, I don't know if there's something that's kind of there has to be a reason why it's not working. All right, so what I would suggest even before going to another hat hoop is trying to figure out uh and try to fix that problem. Like try to fix it and then good. But I do use the Gen 2. Okay, uh, yeah. Reason why I use Gen 2. Okay, it was really because when we got into we did a big project for dad hats. We were getting slight shift. Okay, it was a design that was so sensitive that a little small shift, all right, threw everything off. And the fact that the Gen 2, okay, holds it down in 3 points, 3 points of to secure. Okay, um, that's the big reason. And once we got used to it, it was kind of hard not to use it anymore or to change it up. Then T-Town, is there a way to save the PNG of what stitches would look like in real, like real? Um, so you could put the true view. Okay, you could put true view, and then you could save it as a PDF. And then depending on what, it all depends what software you use. But if you use something like Illustrator, you could open it up, something like that. But to look like real life, that would be kind of difficult. Okay, because some people try to do it, but you could tell when it's kind of software related. All right. That's something. That's a good question. I would kind of look. I would look more into it. Okay, so I'll probably get back to you with an answer for that one. All right. I heard Hatch 3 is pretty good. Okay. Um, and then I don't know about Chroma. I'm gonna start messing with it next year. See. Um, just FYI, we have so this year. Do you know how many Saturdays is left remaining this year? All right. All right. Let me know if you know. We have 6 Saturdays remaining. All right. I'm super excited because we're going all the way through with the embroidery class. So on day one, our first class, I don't know if you remember, it was actually New Year's, right? It was New Year's. I really didn't know what to expect with an embroidery class. Okay. My goal when I started the embroidery class, I was kind of, I wanted to, let's say my goals, right? The goals was, when they say, design like your customer or your avatar, right? Or your viewer. Okay, my viewer, I always seen me teaching the class as I would want putting myself back a couple years ago. So when I'm teaching you all, okay, and my whole process is how would I want to have been taught myself. So I'm pretending that I'm teaching myself in the previous time. If that kind of makes sense, right? Like if I were to go back in time, how would I want somebody to have taught me? Okay. That's why I like to know the small little details. Don't tell me what to put to punch in. Don't tell me what the settings I should do. Tell me why should I use these settings. Okay. So we have 6 shows left. Everything that we learn, okay, we're going to go full circle and we're going to apply a lot of information. That's why next week we're going to take all this info, okay, and we're going to make patches, not just patches, but uh, shapes that we can use, right, in real life. Okay, so kind of be ready to kind of move a little faster next week when we're just kind of pumping out. They're going to be patches, but you can also use them as swatches. All right, so they're going to be used for, they're going to be used for multiple reasons. All right, T-Town, where does it show the trims on the main screen while you're working on file? Um, pull this up right here. Hold on. Let me see if I understand your question real quick. So my trims is on the information part here. Um, design information, it'll say trims. Okay, so here I usually keep three windows open. Okay, it does minimize my space here that I'm working with. Okay, but I like to see info also here stitching. It'll tell me my minimum stitch, maximum stitch. Okay, if there's something that's too big, I need to go back and fix it, right? So I'm kind of checking myself here. Okay, but I'm usually here. Okay, but it's here on trims. Okay, bottom left is telling me all my info that I need to know. It's telling me my X and Y's, my L's, so my length, right? We talked about length. And then A for angle, it's telling me when I'm digitizing, it's telling me my angles, right? A lot of extra information. There are times where I need to stop and see certain information like that. All right. Oh, screen. And then also to add to that question, all right, because there might have been another thing here. T on the design on the software, it'll it'll show you. So this circle here tells me where that needle first comes in, and then it tells me where it makes that cut. So triangle for Wilcom here. Okay. I think for a lot of them, they have some type of indication. All right. Good question right there. Uh, and then I am Quay. Yes, it was tight and looked rough. And thank you for explaining the underlay portion. I was messing with the numbers that you planned and I started to see changes. Yep. So, of course, experimenting is the best way to learn, but you don't just want to experiment blindly, right? We want to know if we do make a tweak, we should expect a certain outcome. And if that certain outcome does happen, then we know, right, exactly why it happened. So we're not just shooting from the hip. We're kind of making uh, educated guesses when we're experimenting. Okay. And then Chroma has save option to save as real looking PNG embroidery file. That okay for you mockups. I just didn't want to have to pull the PS over there. All right, all right, all right. Yeah. So like I said, next year. All right. And usually when you say next year, it seems like so far in advance, but it's in a couple weeks. All right. Lot of good, a lot of good items on the to-do list for next year because okay, next year I'm going to have to close down shop here and I'm going to take the show on the road. All right. So I'm US Navy. I am doing I am changing commands where I'm going to eventually move to San Diego, but the first half of the year I'll be living in Virginia. Okay, I'll be in Virginia doing training. Okay, but I'm going to have a good amount of time to do lives, all right? I'm actually going to bump up the live to twice a week. Okay, so right now I'm planning what I'm thinking of. I might keep the Saturday because I really like Saturday. I'm so used to Saturday. I get pumped up Saturday when we do the show. Okay, and I might do a Tuesday. Okay, I'm still thinking about the Tuesdays right now. All right, but if there's any suggestions, anything that you think would make the show better, um, I'm always open for recommendations. All right, I don't really, there's some people that get kind of butthurt when they get recommendations or feedback. Okay, I'm all about feedback. You tell me if there's something that's kind of uh, lacking in the show, right? I would accept any feedback that you have. All right. All right. Lelia, question. I just did spacing by percentage in the edit objects and the toolboxes on the left, MBX as 4%. Okay. Is there a percentage amount that's okay? I usually don't work with percentage because it's not like an exact value. Unless you know the exact value, I would be hesitant to use percentage. Um, yeah, because there wouldn't be a percentage is based off what it is at that moment. So I don't know what the percentage could be. So that's a little tricky because um, there's no number I could give because there's no definite starting point. All right. So uh, if there's a number that you could change, okay, then that's a little different. But uh, what is that? That's for genome MBX, the toolbox. Okay, I might have to look in that one too because I've never seen it like that. And just percentage wise, adjusting just by percentage. Okay. I would say if you do change something percentage, it would have to be something very minor. Like you're not making a major change. Okay. Usually when they say change something by the percentage, usually there's a small wiggle room, right? The generic is like 5%. You don't want to go above a 10%, right? But in certain situations it might work, but I don't know if it would work in your specific situation. Uh, hey, good morning, so handmade. All right, thank you. And then I have P Design 11 and I hate it. I like will come better. All right, all right. All right. I do want to get into more software next year, so I'm gonna mess with a lot of software because really, once you understand embroidery, right? The first stitch, the running stitch, the one stitch, right? And then you see the combination. I'm pretty sure you could pick up on other softwares. Hey, good morning, Janet. Uh, all right, right. Angel Duran. All right, all right. And then Lelia, Virginia, we're in live. Yup, we're gonna be live. I'll be like around Virginia Beach area. So, uh, and then thank you for hope. Yep, yep, yep. Good old San Diego. Lejean, never thank you for your time, for bringing knowledge. Always so much. Yep. Oh, thank you for reminding me. Yep. It's Thanksgiving, right? All right, right. Yep. All right. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody, right? By the time we see each other again, right? We're already gonna be stuffed. We're probably gonna be 10 pounds heavier. All right. At least I know myself. I am definitely going to be 10 pounds heavier by next week. Okay. I'm actually on vacation right now. So, right. For me, my best holiday is Thanksgiving. So I'm glad I'm actually right I'm in the States, right, with my family. So I'm definitely grateful for that. Okay. This week being on vacation for a couple weeks. All right. My plan is to pump out videos, all right, information, okay, a lot of this info that I kind of you'll see right here behind me, okay, I have stacks and stacks of just paperwork, all right, that I need to kind of bundle up, put into PDFs, stitch them out, okay, so look out for all that information, all right, and if you're here on the replay, all right, if you didn't have a chance to ask a question, you can always ask it in the comments, all right, it's easier for me to answer questions here in YouTube because sometimes in uh the other platforms, okay, it's a little bit more difficult just time wise. Okay, this one is easier to track through YouTube. All right, so I do want to thank everybody for stopping by. Once again, today's files, the swatches, they are available for download. If you want amplifying information, PDFs that are going to go with this information, okay, I do have a channel group membership. You are all welcome to join. A lot of information is going to be put out there. All right, I want to thank everybody for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.